Welcome. So nice to see you all here again. It's been a little while since I was here. I was here right before Christmas. Wasn't I? Wasn't it December? It was right before December. Okay. So now probably a lot of you know that I'm going to be coming back every month. So it'll be like this third Saturday of every month. So, thank you. As long as people are interested in coming, then I will come. So, I don't remember exactly what I talked about then, but I think I did talk about being post-spiritual. Did I talk about that? Yes. Okay. It's only gotten worse in the last few months since then. I do know that I talked about, because I do always at the end of the year, about the New Year's booklet that I put out that's on my website that has your intentions and things for the new year and all that kind of stuff. So we did that and talked about that. And I did that. I set all of these goals and intentions, and then really within a couple of weeks, it was all just blown to bits, basically, because I went on. It's been like an accelerated year. I don't know what your year's been like so far, but it's been on like some kind of internal hyperdrive. And so all of those things that were, okay, I've this and this and this and this and this, things began to move very quickly, and I realized in a very short period of time, I don't give a shit about all that stuff. I really don't care about all that stuff. But that is really the value in setting those goals. And the way that we turn dreams into reality is by making them goals. You don't want to be just a dreamer. The way that dreams come true is when they become actual goals, and it really saves time. You know, the essence of so much of New Thought is that as soon as you really set the intention, law begins to work, and it starts to move. But there's no place in New Thought for wishy-washiness. I'm surprised sometimes at the amount of wishy-washiness there is in New Thought. But New Thought has been so bastardized and messed up in the last 10 to 20 years. It's gotten mixed in with so much other stuff that has nothing to do with it, and I've become wildly old school. My favorite teachers are all dead. Dead. But New Thought got mixed in with a lot of self-help and psychology and this and that and the other thing that really had very little to do with it. And so in a lot of ways it made people very wishy-washy about things. And I don't know, God's will. There's no such thing really in the way that people mean that. God doesn't have any kind of a plan for you and doesn't want anything for you. So the idea of whatever God wants is a ridiculous religious notion that has nothing to do with New Thought. All of New Thought is based on what do you want. The universe is waiting for you to decide what you want. When anybody really in New Thought is talking about God's will, that's extremely general because what it means is happiness. Happiness and expansion, that's the only will of God for any of us. But you get to decide what that looks like for you, right? And so when we set these goals, the idea is that we set very non-attached goals in pencil. They're non-attached goals because what we're really going for here ultimately is the feeling. The only reason that there's anything that we want in life is because of the way we think that will make us feel. We think we would feel better if our body were healthier. We think we would feel better if we were in a relationship. We think we would feel better if we had more money. So what we're really talking about is the difference between the form and the content. And so what we're really ultimately going for is the content. And so that's really why everything got blown to bits for me very quickly, was because my dominant intention is the content and the feeling. I found out very quickly that I was achieving the feeling and that the form that I thought it was going to come in was really not it. So that was great. Since I wasn't attached, it didn't upset me. I was just like, oh, I thought I wanted that. I don't want that. I want the feeling of that. And so it's been a very interesting couple of months, and now about every 10 years, I don't know what, we go through cycles, I don't know what your life is like, but I go through cycles about every 10 years or so where it really is like a transformative experience. And out of that, it's really like I'm somebody else entirely, basically. And so I've been going through that experience, and so I killed Jacob, strangled him. He was such a whore, you know, that in terms of the, Carolyn Mace talks about the prostitute archetype. And the prostitute archetype doesn't have anything to do with sex, really. It can, but it doesn't really. It has to do with the things that we do in order to get what we want. That's the prostitute archetype. Is I don't want to do it, but I will do this in order to get this. So my prostitute had been very active, making a lot of deals. And so I strangled him, threw him in the trunk of the car. And I've spent the last 6 to 8 weeks, so this is a perfect time of year for this, spring cleaning, getting rid of all his shit. Got rid of his clothes, got rid of his crap. And if you want to do some spring cleaning, here's the way to do it. This is my suggestion to you. This is what I do. It works like a charm, is turn on hoarders while you're doing it. It's very inspiring. It's very helpful to see somebody who's ruminating over whether they should keep that. I don't know, I might need that wrapper from that cough drop. It's a major conversation that's had. Because we are so thing identified, my stuff. Because that's what you really see with these people, is what they say over and over and over again is, I am my stuff. And so if I get rid of this stuff, I don't know who I am because I am identified with my things. We talk a lot of times in spiritual circles about not being body identified, but this is just everything is my body. That little scrap of paper, how many of you have watched any of the Hoarders shows? Well, you must, because sometimes it'll be like, they'll be tripping. Well, first of all, it's just so filled with crap. But, a lot of times there's like dead animals and shit in there. Like, oh, look what we found, a dead cat that's petrified, that's been here for 10 years underneath these books and stuff. Stuff that people are like, it always reminds me of, the Ring. My precious, my precious. Like people are like that about some old piece of scrap paper and stuff. And so when you go through these transformational experiences, it is a much deeper looking at who am I really? And who do I want to be? Who am I becoming? Transformation in the sense of, we talked last year, I think when I was here about makeovers, and I had said a couple of things about 2015. One was I said it's going to be a mental makeover year. And then once I got into it, of course, I realized that wasn't really it either. I have done makeovers before, and a makeover is what you do after transformation. So makeovers are very wonderful after transformation has taken place. So a makeover is what you do after the divorce, after you're done grieving someone's death, after you've gotten out of college, after you're going from one phase of life to another. Then you have a makeover that reflects the transformation. But the transformation I always think of now is when Martha Beck talks about the butterfly, that I didn't really understand. I didn't pay attention in school a lot to science or history or math or crap like that. And so I didn't know this, but for whatever reason, I thought the caterpillars went into a cocoon and then just went on a diet and grew wings. That's kind of what I thought, is they come out thinner with wings. But that is not what happens at all. Those of you who know science probably know that most caterpillars dissolve into caterpillar soup. So they just become this glob of undifferentiated cells. They're just a glob of soup. And then they gradually begin to turn into a caterpillar. But it's not a quick, smooth transition. It starts to turn into a butterfly, then it starts to go back to being a caterpillar. It goes back and forth a little bit, which is how we transform a lot of times, until finally it does turn into a completely different body, completely different wings, and it comes out as something absolutely different. And that really is what this particular time of year is about anyhow. This is really the time of rebirth. So all of this, whether we're talking about the story of Jesus and Easter, being the old self is crucified and dies, and then a new self comes forth that is unlike the old self. Or we're talking about, the pagans. I love the pagans. They have all the good holidays, and then Christianity just stole them. So that's what the Easter Bunny is. The Easter Bunny is part of the pagan rites of spring, which is about, again, birth and being fertile and the newness of spring and everything's being born again. So that's really what we're talking about, is that process that's happening all the time of becoming new, becoming new, becoming new. Remember, this is called new thought. I always quote Merriman and Morrissey saying it's called new thought, but when's the last time you had one? So it's about not just thinking the same old things over and over and over again, but being willing to have completely new thoughts. So I'm in that place where I'm not really sure who I am yet. I'm not quite at that place yet. I keep letting go of the old. As I said, I've probably given away 50% of my stuff. And I didn't have a lot of stuff anyhow, but I gave away probably 200 books. I don't care about that stuff anymore. So much happened at the beginning of the year of letting go of so much, as I was saying, spiritual thinking, spiritualized thinking, trying to twist yourself. I don't know how many of you have done this, where you're trying to twist yourself into believing something, trying to twist yourself into quasi-spiritual thinking, and then realizing, I don't want to be spiritual. I don't like that person. I don't have to like them. I don't wish bad things for them. I don't want to attack them, but I don't like them. I've spent 20 years trying to like that person because I thought that was spiritual. Jesus never said you had to like people. He was even a name caller from time to time. You scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You're like whitewashed tombs that on the outside look good and inside are filled with dead men's bones. That's not nice. But he said it, apparently. So I gave up spirituality. There's that saying of leaving God for God, where you leave God for God. So I left religion for spirituality 30 years ago, and then I left spirituality for spirit. So it's interesting because I've had an identity crisis in a way, but I have not had a crisis of faith. I feel closer to God than ever and know less about God than I ever have. There's a difference between knowing God and knowing about God. And it really is about knowing God, and we don't have to know about God. We don't have to be able to define what that is, right? I know a lot about Cher, but I do not know Cher. You see the distinction? I could tell you a lot about Cher. What she likes to eat, how often she works out. I could tell you a lot about Cher, but I don't know Cher. So those are two different things. So I don't know anymore a lot about God, but I know God more than ever, just by spending time in that presence. I've been reading, there's two different books. There's one by Brother Lawrence from the 17th century that's about practicing the presence. And then Joel Goldsmith wrote a book about practicing the presence. And practicing the presence basically just means that there's no separate God time. It means that there's no need. You can, but there's no need for, well, this is my meditation time. This is when I go and I do my meditation and I sit and I da-da-da. It's that everything is done with God in mind, that God never really leaves your awareness. You're washing the dishes in God's presence. You're having sex in God's presence. You're watching TV in God's presence. That the awareness never leaves, that everything is about that relationship. That's how you know God without necessarily knowing about God. I've let go of so much Well, I just don't have any shits left to give. That's a lot of it right there. I just want to have fun and enjoy my life. So I've let go. That all of that letting go of stuff is just a reflection of the inner letting go. So I just say things now. I just don't care anymore. I just say shit. Let the chips fall where they may. I've lost a lot of friends. But the important part is that I don't miss them. I don't miss anybody. Somebody was writing about, all of this, we go from one kind of pressure to another kind of pressure. And there's so much pressure in the spiritual realm of what you should be doing, which is all horseshit. Write that down. You with notebooks. There's like this pressure now about you should meditate. I never meditate, ever, ever, ever. I never sit down and meditate, ever. And I tried it for years. I did all different kinds, and I just found it completely useless. That I experienced the presence of God much more just in my normal day-to-day walking around life than sitting down. So what I say is, if meditation is helpful for you, do it. If it's not, stop trying to make it work. Somebody posted this thing about how, meditation, it changes your brain waves and it and studies and da-da-da-da. And I said, everything changes your brain waves. Like we say this stuff like it means something. Meditation, it actually literally changes your brain waves. Yeah, everything changes your brain waves. Watching the evening news will change your brain waves. Duh. If you want to, I posted this, people were so mad. Oh, they were so mad. The spiritual people are the most hateful people on the face of the earth. They really are. It's the truth. They're the most hateful people on the face of the earth. So I wrote on my public Facebook page, I had written this. So meditate if you want to, and if it's helpful to you, meditate. But everything changes your brain waves. I said, watching the evening news is something that will really mess up your brain waves. If you want to be happy, but you don't like meditating, just stop watching the evening news. The vile, hateful responses to that, which let me just warn you, if you're on my Facebook page, as soon as you say anything even slightly negative, I delete you and ban you from the page. I'm amazed that people don't do that on their public pages. Like, it's a democracy. No, it's not. It's a Facebook page. The hell is wrong with you? That's like saying, come in, take a shit on my coffee table. It's okay. No, it's not. But people got outraged. How dare you have to watch the news and then take your antidepressant? Right? Watch the news if you want to. You don't have to. It's so amazing what happens when you start freeing yourself from the tyranny of should. This is what's right. This is what's spiritual. This is what's loving. If there was ever a meaningless word in the world, it's the word love. It's like God. Everybody conjures up something that usually is not it. I remember in one of Joel Goldsmith's books, they're talking about love, and he says, he's talking with his practitioners, the people who are around him a lot, and so the practitioner core basically, and they're talking about love, and he said, I have no idea what you're talking about when you say love. He says, I don't love anybody. I'm not aware of love at all. And they were like, what do you mean, Joel? You're one of the most loving people that we know. He said, well, I don't know what you mean. They said, well, if somebody calls at midnight and they're sick in the hospital, you will go, you will get up in the middle of the night or sit and treat for them. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. But see, what Joel meant was what we mean by love, which is a vibration and a force. What the world means by love is affection and a mood. And that is the tiniest, and most ephemeral part of love, is the feeling of love. That feeling of what oftentimes is just attachment. Right? The things we do in the name of love are oftentimes manipulative and controlling. So what he was saying, what he was saying was, I don't have to feel love to do all those things. I do all those things because of who I am. That's when you start to understand what we really mean by love and how it doesn't really need to go by the name of love. When I was talking about 2015 also being the year of self-love, I had to really work on explaining to people what that really means, because most people think, again, that that means affection for yourself. And that is not what it means. That's very hard to feel that affection for yourself all the time because you know yourself. You've probably annoyed yourself today. Now it's going to be hard to feel some affection for yourself. Right? That's why that Louise Hay thing doesn't work. When Louise Hay talks about self-love, the first step she talks about is absolutely fantastic and vital, where she says you must give up all self-criticism. Then she talks about looking in the mirror and saying, I love you, I really, really love you, which we all know almost never works. It's hard to feel affection for a flat image in a reflected surface. Right? It's not like you can pick up a kitten and go, I love you. You look in the mirror and go, I love you, I really, really, what the hell? This is like, I don't know. I'm supposed to feel something here. Right? But it's not about a feeling. That love is an action. That's what I want you to start to understand, is that self-love is an action that you take. It's not a feeling that you feel. Terry Cole Whitaker, I never forgot her saying that because it's just so freaking genius, where she said, if you live your life according to your feelings, and by that, she didn't mean intuitional guidance. She meant your feelings. She said, if you live your life by your feelings, you will never achieve your potential, because most of the time you won't feel like it. Because we live by our moods. There's a line in the Course in Miracles that says that our problem is the belief that no one, including ourselves, is worthy of consistent effort. So we think I have to feel affection for myself in order to do something loving for myself. And that's why we never make any progress with self-love. You have to take the action whether you feel like it or not. And the perfect example of this is motherhood. A mother does not necessarily feel affection for her child all the time. Listen. Oh man, this is secret. I'm saying stuff I shouldn't be saying. But I know somebody who adores her child. Her child is grown now, pretty much an adult. And we were together one day, hanging out, and just loves her child, does everything, just talks about how amazing and talented and this and that and the other thing. And then we were together for a little while, the three of us, and then the kid left the room, and she said, sometimes I could just strangle her. So she doesn't feel affection for her all the time, but she loves her all the time. So particularly when you have small children, you might just want to strangle that kid sometimes. Right? Who knows what they're doing, but you continue to do the loving thing. You don't say, you know what? You're not eating today. I don't like the way you acted today. You can clean your own diaper. Right? That you just do the thing. You don't have to feel like doing the thing, and you don't have to feel affection. And when you start to act that way towards yourself, it shifts your whole idea of what self-love is you don't have to feel affection to yourself to feed yourself lovingly today. That you do it as an action, as a spiritual action of self-love. I don't have to feel good about myself to treat myself well. I don't have to feel good about myself. And of course, what we know is in the terms of action, we always get it backwards. I always talk about living in opposite world. We always get it backwards. If I had more confidence, I would ask for a raise. No, if you ask for a raise, you'd get more confidence. It's always the reversal of the way mind thinks things are. Oh, if I felt better about myself, I would take better care of myself. No, if you took better care of yourself, you would feel better about yourself. It's always the reversal of things in this world. That's why Jesus spoke in paradoxes all the time. It's the reversal of everything. We're waiting to feel like it. That's why so much of our discipline is about watching our mind, our mouth, our moods, and our attitudes. Write that down. That's your job right there. My job is to guide my mind, my mouth, my moods, and my attitudes. To guide them, to work on them, to consciously decide what I want them to be. That really, new thought is about making decisions. It's about deciding. Deciding how you want to feel. Deciding you want to feel good. Deciding you want to be happy. Deciding you want to be healthy. Deciding you want to be loving. There's no room for hope in new thought. Hope is another hallmark religious principle that has nothing whatsoever to do with spirituality that is really spiritual. Hope is that horrible, horrible, vicious girlfriend you have on the side. It's not the real deal, right? I hope it works out. Okay, well then you don't understand new thought and you're wasting your time in it if you're hoping things will work out. Terry always used to say, she would say, if anyone says to you, I'm sorry it didn't work out, say, it did work out. This is how it worked out. It did work out. This is how it worked out. I'm sorry it didn't work out with your marriage. It did work out. This is how it worked out. Different houses. That's how it worked out. Right? You get a whole new definition. So, Ernest Holmes used to talk about, at various times, how, and really, to me, religious science is rooted in prayer. That's really what it's all about. It really is about prayer, but it's a different kind of prayer, and that's why we have to be very careful about mixing in all sort of metaphysical spirituality with what is truly new thought. Because what is really new thought has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with prayer that is supplication and saying, please this, please that, please this, please that. There is no God that does shit. Write that down. There's no God who does shit. That's Santa Claus. There's no, oh God, please end that war. There's no God who does that. Oh God, please heal this disease. There's no God that does that. Those are all Santa Claus images of something out there that's going to fix situations. That is not what new thought is. So I want to read, this is my new spiritual mentor, Eric Butterworth. One of the main reasons that he is my new spiritual mentor, I read Eric Butterworth's books many, many years ago, and then I picked him up again recently. And the reason he's my new spiritual mentor is because he lectured right up basically till his death at 86. In New York City, where for many, many years, he went sort of different venues. He was in Town Hall and Avery Fisher Hall and all these big venues. And he was a unity minister, and right up till he was at the very end, he was still speaking all the time. And that's why I'm here. Okay? Because when I was here last time, I was saying, I would love to be here, but I don't want to drive here. I don't want to take the crappy frickin' drive. I burned out on that drive, and I don't want that drive. Well, let me tell you some of the evolution of that. There were several things at the beginning of the year, which was one of the issues that I was having, basically, this sort of divine discontent, was that I was bored. Now, boredom is an enormous problem. I don't know in the rest of the world, but in the United States, boredom is an enormous, enormous issue. People think that boredom has to do with having nothing to do, but it doesn't. A lot of very busy people are bored. People who are working are often bored while they're doing it. And that's why we just stir up shit to make things exciting. Maybe I'll just start a little fight. Right? That's a lot of times the reason people have kids is because they're bored. Truly, oftentimes people will start families out of boredom. They don't admit it to themselves. They really think like, well, it's just going to be you and me? Just me staring over at you across the breakfast table until we die? Right? Let's have some kids to break up the monotony. We'll have something to do. So there are lots of things that we do out of boredom. Well, I have evolved enough in my life experience to know not to do something in order to fix a problem. Did you know that? Don't do stuff to fix a problem. Abraham always says, there is not enough action in the universe to make up for misaligned energy. So if you're doing something to fix a problem before you've lined up your energy, you are what Marianne Williamson used to call rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Right? Just moving things around on a ship that's going down. So I knew enough not to just start doing things. And I was talking to my friend Zan on the phone about this one day and said, well, I know the feeling that I want. So we started talking about the feeling. And one of the major themes, for those of you who've been around me for a while, that I talk about is walking through the open doors in life. This is really, everything is consciousness. And when we're working on your consciousness, then doors begin to open. And most of us have, not most, I shouldn't say that, many of us spent a lot of wasted time smashing our bloody heads against doors that did not want anything to do with us. So at a certain point, I was like, I'm just walking through the open doors from now on. So as I'm talking to Zan on the phone, I was talking about, here's the feeling I want, and this is I don't know what it would look like, but I want something to do that engages me, that I like to do, that'll be fun, that won't take up a lot of time, because I don't need a lot of activity, just a little bit. And so we talked about this, and I'm going, where's the open door? When the open door? And then John is tormenting me all the time. When are you coming down? We'd like to have you down all the time. I'm like, leave me alone. I don't want to drive down there. I hate driving down there, and I don't want to drive down there, and I'm not going to drive down there, and stop asking me to drive down there. Where's my open door? I want an open door. And one of the things that I had talked about in my classes last year was this idea of when we set our intention and law begins to move and things start to happen, that the issue that arises in many situations for us is, and this is the thing that stops us in many cases from living our dream, is resistance comes up and you have to walk through your resistance. Now, we're not talking about pushing and forcing your way through your resistance, because that just makes things worse. We're talking about soothing yourself through your resistance. And the way I described it at the time was that it's like having your dream and not moving through your resistance is like wanting to go swimming but not wanting to get wet or cold. I really want to go swimming, but I don't want to get all wet and cold. That's the resistance, right? The resistance, I want that, but not that, right? But usually that means that, right? It means that you're going to get wet and cold if you want to swim. Like there are things that you have to drop the resistance to that in order to get to the next step. And that's really how dreams come true, is when somebody's dream came true, they moved through their resistance. We think, oh, they didn't have any resistance. No, they moved through their resistance. They also didn't want to do stuff. There was stuff they didn't want to do about it. But they wanted the dream enough that they moved through their resistance. And the resistance is just the excuse that we use for not doing whatever it is. That's all. It's just the excuse that we use. It's just like, I can't because, right, I don't want to. And oftentimes, we don't even get to the point where we're really like even up against the resistance. Usually, we're just sitting on the sofa thinking about the possible resistance. So we're not really living the life that we want to live because we're just sitting there thinking, it'll be hard to park. right? We're so far from the experience, right? We want a relationship, but we don't want to date or talk to anybody. Somebody should just be assigned and show up at the door perfect, right? I don't want to go over there and say hello to that person, right? Well, they're busy now. I'll wait till everyone else dies. Yeah, right? So it's self-rejection. It's self-rejection before anything happens. So like I said, I was in that place of, oh, the door is open, and it's just about me soothing myself through the resistance. Well, you soothe yourself through the resistance by telling yourself a better story, that's all. Right? You just tell yourself a better story. Also, resistance perverts all of the so-called facts because you're seeing them through your resistance. So you're usually not even seeing what's really going on. One of the things, even where I was in that place of, I'm burned out on driving to San Diego, and da-da-da-da, that completely blocked out the fact that it's a different experience now. Because when I was driving all the time, I wasn't just driving to San Diego, I was setting up an entire room, right? I was rearranging the chairs, and I was setting up the podium, and I was lighting the candle, and I had the little sound system, I had to bring the donation box, and I had to move it all, and then I had to break it all down, and see, none of that's happening now, right? I just come in here and see you guys and try not to talk to you beforehand. I deliberately don't talk to anybody before the lectures because you might say something that's just going to ruin the whole damn thing for everybody. You will think it's a really innocuous thing you said, and it will just spin me off into something that will ruin the whole talk that I meticulously planned out to give. And all you're going to hear is a lot of BS because somebody said, "What's new?" So, how dare you? So, and then I just, oh, well, how can you make it nice? Well, it's a great opportunity. I'm a little bored. Get out of town anyhow, play some new CDs, do this and that. You just soothe yourself through the experience. You don't force it and make it, oh, I'm pushing through the resistance. We're constantly soothing and massaging our thoughts. We're soothing and massaging. I always talk to myself like someone who's had a mild stroke. Now, sweetheart, we're going to get the mail. Get up slow. So you're just always soothing yourself into a better feeling place. So part of this whole accelerated process, I realized that I had a lot of various levels of stress over the last 3 months. A lot of people I know died. Just a lot of stuff was going on. And then part of it was I was starting to worry a little bit. And see, the only way you can really worry, this is a great Byron Katie thing, is if you want stress on purpose, get a future. See, I started thinking I had a future. You can only worry if you think you have a future. So I realized that all my worry was coming from the idea of having a future. What if this? When are you gonna? What about? As soon as I just went, oh, that's really none of my business. My business is, see, this is another thing that Terry used to say is, if you do the right thing in the present, the future takes care of itself. So what does it mean to do the right thing in the present? You're thinking the right thoughts. So if you're thinking right in the moment, the future takes care of itself because it's just the endless unfolding of now. Every thought that I'm thinking now is sowing a seed. So it's going to bear fruit and a harvest in the next now and the next now and the next now and the next now. So that's all I really have to worry about. So once I got with that, that was good. Then this whole thing with Eric Butterworth was, because I would get into the future of like, oh gosh, you're going to be on the road like until you're 90 years old, driving to San Diego and driving to Santa Barbara and driving this. And then Eric Butterworth was 86, and I was like, well, yeah, what about it? So you're driving until you're 86 or until they take your license away. What's the big deal? Like I needed somebody to look to and go, oh, okay. All right, that's fabulous. 86, he would daughter up on stage and do his new thought thing in New York City, right? Not an easy place to live where there's a lot of hustle and bustle right up to the very end. I was like, okay, I can do that. I can do that too. So anyhow, in this book of his, this book, Discover the Power Within You, A Guide to the Unexplored Depths Within. It's a fabulous book. It actually, the foreword to this 40th anniversary edition was written by Maya Angelou. He was actually Maya Angelou's spiritual teacher. And so she was introduced to him in 1955, and she took classes with him, and she says in the introduction, talks about, you know, just what a spiritual mentor he was, and then there's a little blurb from Oprah that this was the book that sort of began her journey and changed her concept of what God is and all of that. But what I love about this book in particular, and it's very new thought, I'm going to read some of it, is it takes the teachings of Jesus. This book in particular is taking a lot of the teachings of Jesus and showing exactly what he meant. And of course, in particular, recognizing that Christ consciousness, that Jesus was not the Savior, he was not different than us, he was not special, that he was somebody just like us who actualized that place that is potential within all of us. And so he has some fabulous things to say, in particular about prayer. In fact, chapter 9, The Forgotten Art of Prayer, I highlighted so much of it that none of it stands out. You ever do that? It's like, well, that was a waste of time. Okay. So, those of you who also study with Abraham talks about ask and it is given. And that's something that's in the Bible, it's something that's in the Course in Miracles, it's something that Abraham talks about. And so he talks about what ask really means. Because if you look at any of the prayers of Jesus, he never asked for anything. He always commanded. There was never supplication in his prayers. It was always, Lazarus come forth, right? It was always some kind of a command. Okay, I have 18 different topics this morning. This is on page 113. The word ask has many different connotations. If you ask your boss for a raise in salary, it is not at all the same as when he asks you to do a piece of work for him. If you ask a neighbor to babysit with your child, you have a different thought than when the landlord comes to your door asking for the rent. It is the former in each case that is the context in which we have thought of Jesus' reference to asking God, but it is the latter in each case that gives insight to Jesus' actual thought. In the original Greek for this word ask, there is a connotation of demand or claim. The boss can demand that you do a job because that is what you are paid to do. The landlord claims his rent as his rightful payment, and when you ask God for help, you are claiming your inheritance as a spiritual thing. You ask for life by affirming life. You ask for success by getting into the consciousness of success. You ask for peace by affirming peace and letting the spirit of peace permeate your mind and heart. Prayer is not a way to turn on the light in God, but to turn on the light in you, and God is that light. The purpose of prayer, then, is to affirm in our consciousness that which is true of God and of our relationship with him. In God, I am now a perfect child. I am strong, confident, and capable. I have the ability to do all that needs to be done. I am one with the all-sufficient substance, so I am secure and fearless. These things may be urgent needs in your experience, but the Father knows even before you ask, and it is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Thus, don't waste your time asking for help. It is already yours. Claim it. Call it forth into expression. Speak the word of truth. Jesus was a master at the use of affirmations, and it may well be that he achieved mastery because of this. Jesus affirmed such truths as, I am the bread of life. I'm the light of the world. I'm the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Joel Goldsmith, when he talks about this, and you could read a lot more about it in his book, The Mystical Eye, says that when Jesus was saying, I am, he didn't mean Jesus the person. He meant the Christ consciousness. And that's when he's saying I am, we're all to say I am. in that same, I am the truth, way, the truth, and life. Not Jacob the person, but I am the bigger me. A friend of mine, her brother died recently, and she had sent me a text a couple of days later saying, they're cremating Bob today. And I said, no, they're not cremating Bob today. They're cremating Bob's body, a body that Bob did not like and Bob went to a lot of trouble to get rid of. Right? That is only a very small part of Bob. So when we think of ourselves as the person that we see is like the tip of an iceberg. That physical body, most of us, is non-physical. We are, at this point, physical and non-physical. When we drop this body, then we're just non-physical. So what that basically means is the tip of the iceberg just melts. And so all that's left is that enormous self that is all of the rest of the iceberg, right? So all that happened with Bob was that he went from physical to non-physical entirely. So to limit ourselves to, oh, they're cremating Bob. No, they're cremating the body that Bob used for X number of years, right? That's why we don't want to get body identified. We have a body. The body is wonderful. It's wonderful to use. It's wonderful to have fun with. It helps us to communicate with other people. It can do all kinds of different things. But we are not that body. We're just using that body, right? All right. Thinking in terms of the divinity of Jesus, we have seen these statements as evidence that he lived under a special dispensation, but actually he was demonstrating the divinity of man. He was simply claiming his spiritual unity with the infinite, affirming the truth for and about himself. We must affirm the same truths about and for ourselves. When thou prayest, enter into the inner chamber and shut thy door. This is Jesus' teaching of the silence, the dynamic concept of deep prayer. In a very real sense, much of what we think of as prayer is but preparation for prayer. Okay, this is so good. We're just about to get to something so good. In a very real sense, much of what we think of as prayer is but a preparation for prayer. It is the process of resolving the conflicts of the mind so that we can then be still and know that I am God. When we plug the battery into a charger, it does not chatter away about how much it needs the charging. Is that the best thing ever? Real prayer is plugging in to the source and then not chattering away about how much we need the charging. That what we think of as prayer is all that, I really, really need help now, I really need a miracle now, I really need this now, I really need, right? Just shut the hell up and plug in. Receive the connection. That's your job, is just to receive the connection. So much of what we think of as prayer is the preparation for the actual prayer, which is shut up. Just shut up and receive. All right. It simply and quietly accepts the inflow of energy. And when we pray, Jesus is telling us we should get into the depths of our being and shut out the concerns of the world and pray to the Father in secret. But this whole chapter is really about the essence of that prayer. So much of what we think of as prayer is still old-time religious bargaining and begging and making deals. And we really need to get away from that and to see how quickly, this is the thing that I've been talking about a lot with people in the last years, how quickly we go to principle. Because here's the thing, is as I've gone through this whole experience of transformation that I'm in, I'm still caterpillar soup. As I'm still caterpillar soup, starting to feel the wings forming. What was I saying? What's that? Oh, going to principle, yeah. Oh, thank you for paying attention. Okay, so I was lost in the moment. Is even with the loss of, okay, well, I'm not sure exactly, I know who I'm not anymore, and I'm starting to figure out who I am, but I've never lost any faith in principle. Many of the forms have dissolved. Many of the concepts have dissolved. So much of what I was taught, has just completely been shredded by me and released, and I feel so good. So, like 50% of the Course in Miracles just went the wayside. Just totally went completely the wayside. Then the other 50% was like, oh, this is very good and this is helpful. But half of it just got dissolved. But principle never changed for me at all. And that's why I say I'm so old school now. I'm really interested, and this is the thing. In times of great change, and we are in times of great change, and I don't mean that in a tumultuous way. I just mean that we live in a time when something you bought yesterday is not going to be existing next week. Like next week, it's like, oh, sorry, we stopped all making all that stuff. So everything is constantly, it used to be like you would be in an age where, a tractor or a plow, generations of like nothing new. Now everything is new all the time. So when we're in a time as we are of rapid change, the worst thing you can do is resist change. So what do you want to do in order to relax into change? Keep your eyes on the things that don't change. Principle never changes. Principle never changes. The things that Ernest Holmes said in the Science of Mind text are as true today as they were then, because they're based on principle and not on feelings and forms and different ways of doing things. It's just principle, right? Even your GPS cannot be trusted. Because, oh, that used to be a road, and now it's not a road anymore, it's a housing community. Or, wow, that used to just be the woods, now there's 18 roads there. Right? So even your GPS will change all the time. You know what doesn't change? The North Star. You can always guide yourself by the North Star. So principle is like the North Star. It doesn't change. You can count on it. So if you lose all of your technology and stuff like that, then you can look to the things that never change. That's why I keep going back to these old school metaphysicians that haven't added in a lot of other sort of bastardizations of New Thought. We went through a phase in a lot of New Thought churches where it was like, we're going to talk about psychotherapy and feelings and all of this stuff. And so what you got was a lot of wounded people who were not practicing principles, so they never got better. So then they got all the attention, and then it became like social services. Okay, a New Thought church is not supposed to be social services. Social services is social services. This is a place where you come to practice principle, right? So it got all mixed up in trying to fix and heal people. You cannot fix and heal people, thank God. Even Jesus did not go around deliberately fixing and healing people. He went around teaching principle, and if somebody showed up and wanted healed, he would just casually heal them. When he told the apostles, go out and preach the gospel, gospel means good news, not the bad news. He didn't say, go out and tell people how screwed they are and how hard the world is. Right? He said, go out and tell them the good news. The good news is, yeah, there's tribulation in the world, but you can overcome the world. You can be in the world and overcome the world. Right? This was my big revelation that also rocked people when I started talking about how, do you know that the world is good? The world is good. The world was not something created by the ego as an attack on God. That's just bullshit, because Helen hated the world and hated people, but it's not true. Scripture says right there, God created this and said it was good. God created that and said it was good. He created the firmament, he created the water, he created the sun, and he said it was all good. And he created man and said it was good. It is all good. Your body is real and it's good. Spiritual people hate that. Even religious people hate that. Because religious people also believe, well, the world is evil and it's bad and it's sinful, but eventually we'll go to a good place. Isn't that awesome? Just hang the hell in there. Eventually, this will all be over, and the fun will come in your white robe, later on. Right? And then spiritual people just took that on too, of like, well, I'm learning all these soul lessons, and my karma, and my this, and then eventually I'll learn to forgive. That's why I can't say it here. But, in my book, The Crabby Angels Chronicles, it says blank forgiveness. Right? You don't have to forgive. Just let it go. Just let it go. You don't have to forgive it. Just let it go. What does it mean to let it go? It means you stop thinking about it. Too often, our idea of forgiveness is I'm going to think about it a lot until it doesn't bother me when I think about it. Well, good luck with that. And you can't just stop thinking about something either. So what do? I'm going to think about something else. Am I being recorded still? Okay, just want to make sure. Because I almost said something. Okay, so you just start thinking about something else instead of trying to spiritualize everything and tie yourself into knots to be somebody else's idea of what spiritual is. I have spent the last 10 years very deeply studying joy and peace and love. Deeply, deeply studying it. Do you know that most of what passes for spirituality is studying misery, struggle, and resistance? On my way down here, I was cleaning out my CDs because I just don't, half this stuff doesn't apply to me anymore. CDs that I listened to millions of times. So I was throwing stuff out. I don't know, probably like 100 CDs I was cleaning out just while I was driving, like, bullshit, 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 bullshit. And one of them was, I may never be asked back again. Anyhow, one of them was, and there's people that I like, but what they teach to me is just crazy. And one of those people is Pema Chodron. I like Pema Chodron, but she's got to be the most miserable spiritual teacher on the face of the earth since Mother Teresa died. Who was super miserable and wildly depressed. I'm always so amazed that people think that she was like, oh, Mother Teresa. It's like, Mother Teresa was probably, I would say, clinically depressed. If you read the book that was published of her letters that she wrote to the priest that was her, basically, confidant. So, right there's your confidence. Well, wait till you're dead and publish your letters. Okay, so they were just full of how depressed she was. She did not feel the presence of God. She didn't know why she had to do all of this. She was miserable. Christ had denied himself to her. And then the priest would say, well, just fake it. It's all very healthy. Anyhow, Pema Chodron talks about the practice of Tonglen, which is the worst idea in the history of spiritual ideas. Tonglen is where you breathe in the suffering and misery of the planet. Breathe in all the suffering, and then breathe about. This is how you heal other people. Think about who is suffering and how they're dying and they're being raped and murdered and bombs are dropping. And breathe in the suffering of the world, and then breathe it out again. And I was looking at this CD. I had a bunch of her CDs, and first of all, the names of her books are always good, like The Wisdom of No Escape. When Things Fall Apart. Like the wonderful name. So anyhow, I was reading one of these CDs. It was like a 2 CD set, and it was all about, it was the practice of Tonglen and da-da-da-da. And then one of the topics was the 6 kinds of loneliness. Seriously. This is what passes for spirituality now. If you are activating your focus on suffering, what are you increasing in the world? Suffering. Whatever you are focusing on, you are activating and literally creating more of. Let me read. I'm going to have a couple of things to read. One to read, because Abraham is very adamant about how fabulous it is here on the earth. Such a different take, where they say, your life is serving you well and providing the basis of expansion. Wait, that's not here. Your life is supposed to feel good to you, for you have deliberately chosen it as the platform from which more will flow. The appreciation that Source feels for you never-endingly will wrap you in a warm blanket of worthiness if you will allow it. Before your birth into this physical body, you understood the importance of the contrasting diversity on planet Earth. You jumped in eagerly to explore the variety and to enjoy the expansion that you knew would be called through you. You couldn't wait to get here. Then they told you a lot of horrible shit that made you not so glad to be here. And you just forgot, that's all. So what are we doing in any group like this, certainly in New Thought, is we're re-energizing, realigning, and reawakening our original thought that this is a great place to be. We're not saying that there's not horrible stuff that goes on here all the time. There is. But it is so small in comparison with all the good that's going on. It's so small. It seems like a lot, but it's really not. It's just that the news is not the good news. You don't turn in for the evening good news. There wouldn't be time. There's no time for them to cover all the good news because there's too much. There's only enough time to cover the bad news because there wasn't that much. And the reason you can tell there isn't that much is because even in a 24-hour news cycle, like if you watch MSNBC or CNN or something, you can watch it all day long and you will see the same 4 or 5 stories just repeated over and over and over again because they very quickly ran out of bad news. We didn't have that much, so we're going to expand on it. Let's spend an hour on some horrible thing that happened in Ferguson. Then we'll spend the next hour on it. Then we'll spend the next hour on it. Then we'll spend the next hour on it. Let's just cover it and cover it and cover it. Because we can't cover all the good news because there was way too much. There was way too much good stuff that happened today, and nobody wants to hear that shit anyhow. Have you noticed that? Nobody wants to talk about the good stuff. Nobody wants to. That book of Carrie Fisher's Postcards from the Edge. There's a little story. One of the characters said, yeah, I ran into, and of course everybody's suffering in that. And so one of the characters said, oh yeah, I ran into Sally last week. And she said, oh, Bob just got a promotion and we're doing so great. And we just got back from vacation and the kids are all in private school and they're all doing great. And I just found out that I'm in perfect health. And I just looked at her and didn't know what to say. Right? There's no, like we don't know what to say to good news. We're like, so I just said, well, good for you. And then we left. But if you're used to, you run into somebody in the street, it's like, how are you? Oh my God, Bob just lost his job. I almost overdosed on Xanax last week. I don't know what I'm gonna do. My hair's falling out in clumps. You go, oh, let's have coffee. Let's talk about it endlessly. Right? We're not used to that. So in so many ways, it's the reversal. When you start to think, it's good to be here. If we're not having a good time, we're making wrong decisions. And I don't even mean wrong decisions about what we're doing. I mean just wrong decisions about what we're allowing our minds to focus on and think about. I've really come to the conclusion that, honestly, the most profound spiritual practice you can have is just plain old gratitude. If you just did nothing else, but all day long just thought about what is good in front of you and did positive aspects, that alone would rock your world to its very core, right? But we do that for a little while, and then we get distracted, and then we're not just grateful anymore, but now we think the gratitude is about the thing and the stuff, and we get all caught up in all of that crap, right? You just look, even someone like, it's so amazing, Sarah Von Bronick, who wrote Simple Abundance. Remember, she was one of the first sort of Oprah stars from writing books where Oprah brought her in, and her whole thing was about gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Well, she went bankrupt because she just, did you know that? Oh, yeah, she was living with her, she and her cat moved into her sister's apartment. Like, I have nowhere to go. Seriously. She was on Oprah saying that, like I had been flying on the Concorde, I had every shoe in the world. She had like some fabulous house in London that belonged to some famous poet from a century ago. And she had all this money and she was buying all these designer gowns and all this shit. And then she married some man and it was all about like, the money she made from Simple Abundance then was like, oh, screw that Simple Abundance. I want to get on the Concorde and have caviar every day. So then she married some guy who basically took all her money, and she ended up with nothing, knocking on her sister's door with her cat, sleeping on her sofa. Right? We get all confused because it's not about the stuff being bad or good. It's not about not having anything or having a lot of stuff. The things are completely meaningless. It's what your mind does with them. It's when you lose yourself in the form. So it didn't matter whether it was Sarah von Bronick, who had Manolo Blahnik shoes everywhere and was flying on the Concorde and had this house and everything was about opulence and excellence, or it's somebody whose house is filled to the brim with crap from Walmart and a dead cat under a layer of feces and 8 years of newspapers where I can't give any of that up. I mean, I don't know what it's like here in San Diego, but in Los Angeles, even the homeless people are hoarders. Like they'll have 2 shopping carts full of meaningless, useless crap. And don't try to take that paper cup because they will stab you for that paper cup. Right? It's the confusion. It's not about the stuff, but it's about what the mind does with that stuff. So you start gathering up stuff because it makes you happy, and then you don't notice when you've crossed the line to where it's not making me happy anymore. Now it's stressing me out. Now I feel anxiety about it. Now I freak out if somebody touches my cup. Right? All of that stuff where it's like, this is the brilliance of Abraham's, that one basic thing they say all the time, which is nothing is more important than that I feel good. But then you have to know when you feel good. Right? You have to know when you feel good because that's that line that gets crossed. Because at a certain point, hoarding doesn't feel good anymore. It just feels normal. Meaning it feels normal to feel anxious and attached and worried and not safe and needing to be bunkered in and ashamed. That feels normal now, but it doesn't feel good. So we have to know the difference between when we feel good and when we don't feel good. That's part of that practice of, okay, everything, God is with me every moment. That's, again, one of the brilliant parts of the Course in Miracles is where it says, God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. Well, the same thing is true about anything else, right? You can say, fear is in everything I see because fear is in my mind. Whatever's in my mind gets projected outward, right? You have to be very careful about these things. This is why one of the things when I sort of stepped away from thinking, well, I just have to believe everything. It's like, you can pick out the parts you believe. Because I realized there's no such thing as an ego. I mean, even the Course says there's no such thing as an ego. So then why talk about it? We've created a mythical creature that doesn't exist. Let's talk about it a lot. That's no different than making up a devil. Right? I actually saw somebody, this is like, okay, she's completely lost her mind now. But I saw this spiritual teacher who had posted, angels are stronger than demons. I'm like, are you out of your mind? Right? One of the basic things, I may talk all day, John, I'm sorry. One of the things, people I think don't get this. It is a new thought principle that there is no such thing as evil. It does not exist. There is no such thing as evil. New thought is founded on the principle that there is only one power. Even the Course starts out saying there's only one power. There's just a belief in 2. Let's talk about the other one. Stop talking about the other one. It's like, not even metaphorically. It's not even good. Don't bring a metaphorical devil in. Because now you've created one that you believe has power. Just leave it out entirely. Stop talking about it. What I realized was every time we talk about, well, that's the ego stealing your joy. Now you've created an entity to fight and fear. Do you know what it is? This is the brilliance of Louise Hay. It's just a thought. I don't have an ego, but I have some thoughts. This is what I've come to see for myself. When someone points out the violence in the world or the greed in the world or the this that's going on, what I see is there's just sanity and insanity. That's all. When someone points out someone who's done some atrocity in the world, I go, well, that's what insanity looks like. What is insanity? Believing your stressful thoughts. And we all have a certain amount of insanity. What makes you extremely insane is when you just fully believe your stressful thoughts. What makes you kind of insane is kind of believing your stressful thoughts. What makes you sane is questioning and neutralizing your stressful thoughts. And that's why the brilliance of Ernest Holmes in saying that the way that you cure a negative thought is by neutralizing it with a positive thought. So you take a fear thought and you just turn it into a loving thought. To get simple again, Abraham's simplicity is you just say, is that an upstream thought or a downstream thought? An upstream thought means I'm swimming against the current, I'm struggling, I'm suffering, I'm trying to make something happen, I'm smashing my head against a brick wall, I'm moving in the direction of opposition. A downstream thought is I've just let go and I'm letting the current carry me, which is a horrible thing in America. Americans hate that. What do you mean you're just letting go and just floating down? You're floating downstream. You'll never have a statue dedicated to you. There's no plaques for floaters. Right? You'll never get a medal for floating. I remember posting again on Facebook before I deleted someone and banned them, where I was talking about that. Just let go, and you can just go with the flow. I mean, this is the whole Taoist, just go with the flow. And someone took great exception with that. You know what goes with the flow? Dead fish. I'm like, well, honey, you just hang on to that analogy. It seems to be making you happy. Right? The worst thing you can do is not struggle and suffer in America. The more obstacles you have, the better person you are. By God, let me tell you my sad story. Right? Most of the things that are supposed to inspire people just depress me. Right? I'm like, let's hear the happy story. Right? Oh, I fought and I won and I got my house back and I got my job back and I fixed my marriage. I want to hear the story of, I said, take it. The country is littered with houses. There's plenty to go around. Oh my God. All right, I've talked way over my time, so say goodbye on the CD. The CD is now coming to an end. Thank you for listening. All right. Okay, but I do have one more non-CD story, obviously, that I want to tell you. So this is how simple this is, though. This is literally how simple this can be. So we're not being recorded anymore, right? Not that it's bad, but I just wondered. The video, well, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure. Okay. So I have a friend who had to take off a week of work. Now, she has a job, a steady job, but she's basically an independent contractor, so she doesn't get sick time. And so when someone in her family died, she took a week off work. And her family is really dependent upon her salary. And so she was telling her husband, she said, we're out like $1,000 because I'm just in no condition to go to work and I'm not going to get paid for it. And so we're just out $1,000 and we need the money for the rent and we're living very close to the line and da-da-da-da. And because she was telling me this miracle story. And she said, and so instead of her husband going into fear, he said to her, now she's the one who's the big metaphysical student. But he, a couple of years ago, started reading all her books and doing all of her Catherine Ponder affirmations and all of her Louise Hay affirmations and doing all of this stuff. And so she said, we're going to be out $1,000 and da-da-da. And he said, oh, we always have what we need. It's fine. We always have what we need. The universe always provides. And she was like, oh, that's where we're going? Okay, great. Fabulous. Like she was ready for he's going to be depressed and upset and worried. And so she said, oh, okay, yeah. So she said, then we sort of started to play atop this, right? Where you're trying to see how I can be more affirmative than you, okay? I'm going to say that we're going to thrive and we're going to, okay. So they start playing that. So then sure enough, she went back to work a week later, and one of the bosses said, well, I know you don't have any money when you're not working, you need the money, so here's the $1,000. So just gave her $1,000 cash. So she was telling me the miracle story, and I said, and I'm very clear now, because Ernest Holmes says there's no such thing as miracles, that everything happens according to law. We just don't understand the law sometimes because it's unseen. But everything has happened. A miracle would say something has happened that there's no logical way to explain it. But New Thought is all about how it's all perfectly logical. To me, religious science is a return to logic. That it's not like, oh, it's all random. It's like, oh no, if you can follow the trail of the thought and the consciousness, you can see how things unfold the way that they do. The only problem is that we judge the way that things unfolded. That's our problem most of the time, is we think, oh, that was bad. No, it's just what happened. Let's not call it bad. It's just what happened. Now, what are we going to do now that that has happened? So she was talking about the miracle. I said, well, the $1,000, there was nothing miraculous about that. That's just normal. That's the way it's supposed to work. Like there's nothing miraculous and nothing, I'm not surprised when principle is principle. There's nothing surprising about that, I said. But if you want to call something a miracle, I'll tell you what, in my concept, is a miracle is that when this happened, both of you went immediately to principle. When at one time you would have both gone into not only into fear, but then you would have gone into your own individual fear. Your husband would have gone into his own story about, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And then you would have gone into your own story. And then that would have just been more of the problems in relationship of blaming each other or blaming yourselves or all of that stuff. The miracle is you both went to, oh yeah, we always have what we need. Wouldn't that be a miracle for most of us? Well, you get the bad news and you go, well, you know what? All things are held perfectly in the hands of God. It's like that Maya Angelou story I tell all the time when her son, was almost killed, and then when she got to the hospital, the doctor said, well, he'll never walk again, and she went straight to, what do you know? I've consulted a higher authority. Right? Just like that, right? Because it's very general, you understand? She didn't say, oh, I know for a fact he's going to walk, and da-da-da. She just said, you have no idea what you're talking about. I've consulted a higher authority. So my friends didn't say, oh no, somebody is going to give me the $1,000 at work. She didn't have any idea how. They just went straight to, we always have what we need. We don't know how. How is not our part. This is something that Ernest Holmes, I love, where he's always talking about, the seed doesn't know how it becomes a flower. It just does it. It just works on a natural law. We don't have to know how. We're just working with a natural law. We don't have to know how the seed is going to turn into a flower. We don't have to know how the sperm is going to become an embryo and ultimately become a baby that's going to become a person. We don't have to know how. We just participate in the process. And affirmation is positively participating in the process. Fear is negatively participating in the process. You're always participating. There's no not participating. We're always participating. We're just consciously participating or we're unconsciously participating. So this is why always the New Thought teachers would say back in the day, post a guard at the door of your mind. Post a guard at the door of your mind, decide what you will let in, right? Don't be afraid. This is the other thing, is the freedom of when you just release. First of all, everybody already is released, in case you didn't know. The people that you're trying to release, they're already released. It's like you're doing something that's completely unnecessary. When you decide to let people do what they want to, they were going to anyhow. This is a huge aha. Do what you want. Yeah, I was going to. Thanks for getting on board with what was reality anyhow. Right? But when you just start releasing, consciously in your mind saying, I'm going to let people do what they want to do, and you just live in that place of people, it's okay for people to not like me because it's important for me to like me. And so when you get to that place where you decide, I'm going to like me, and so I'm just going to speak from what's real and what's true for me, and that people, it's okay. hate me, leave, whatever. It's great because now I know who I'm not having lunch with. Right? It's just an easier way to live. But one of the things is, I was telling Joel about this before we started, is in Santa Barbara, when I lecture there once a month, I lock the doors at 10 o'clock. Because in Santa Barbara, people live by Santa Barbara time. What that means is that over the years, people would come. I mean, it's very common for people to come 5 or 10 minutes late, but it wasn't that common for people to come 45 minutes late. And because of the way it's all glass doors there, but it's very loud when they come in. And also, people, a lot of times, spiritual people sometimes are so oblivious, it is mind-numbing. People who are all in the love and da-da-da-da, and I would see the interactions with people where somebody would come in late and then smack someone in the head with their purse as they went down the row and not say anything about it and shit. It's like, well, yes, I'm glad you're here for this love experience that is really just all about you and your chair and just disregarding other people as if they don't even exist. And it's rude to come late to a meeting. It's rude to come late to a meeting. It is rude to come late to a meeting. It is rude to come late to a meeting. It's rude to the group and to yourself to come late to a meeting. So I'm like, this train leaves at 10. If you're not on it, you don't get in. So I started locking the door at 10. And there's someone every month who's outside going, and I'm always like, because it's happening during the meditation. And in Santa Barbara, too, a lot of people would come to try to miss the meditation. And I'd be like, no, see, you don't understand. The meditation is so that we are all in the same vibrational frequency. Now you want to come in after it's over and bring up your fucked up consciousness. I'm sorry, Patty. Into this room. After we've all meditated into that state of openness, no, you can't. Go home. Right? So I said that. But it shocks people all the time that I mean what I say. Because most people don't. Most people don't mean what they say. They're just saying things. And so that's why we don't listen to people, because we know that we don't mean what we say, and so we assume they don't mean what they say. And so nothing really counts, right? And so I should be able to do this and to do this and to do this. So I've been doing this really full time since 1990, and I'm not burned out. I enjoy it more all the time because I get freer within it all the time, because more and more I don't care if people like me. I can't teach you the principle and worry about you liking me. I can't tell the truth. Truth and principle is ruthless, meaning God is no respecter of persons. So it doesn't matter if I'm in Santa Barbara. I don't care if Oprah and Gail are outside the door at 10:02. Go home. Principle is ruthless. It doesn't care how well-meaning you are and what a good person you are. This is what spiritual people don't get. It doesn't matter how many good works you do or what a nice person you are. It makes no difference at all in the quality of the demonstrations in your life. There are lots of heinous, horrible people who live really great lives because of their consciousness. Because everything is consciousness. That's why, let me just say a couple of more outrageous things before I send you home. This is why I said all the time, it makes no difference at all who the president is. It makes no difference who is in power in Congress, who your senators are. It makes absolutely no difference whatsoever, because every life is lived by the consciousness of the individual. That's just the horrific truth of New Thought, is every life is lived according to the consciousness of the person, that we give no power at all. This is another one of the parts of the Course that is so great, where it says, I'm under no laws but God's. That doesn't mean that you can just do things that are against the law, but what it does mean is that I am at the effect of my consciousness. I'm not at the effect of what somebody else is doing over there and somebody else is saying over there. Doesn't mean that it won't have reverberations in my life, but it means that I still am the authority in my life. I'm still the creator in my life. So whatever is happening, I am always in every situation free to say, what am I going to make of this? Okay, this is what's happening in the economy. There's a friend who's saying, like, a couple of years ago when it was really bad in the housing things and all this stuff was going on with the economy, and she said, I've decided not to participate in the bad economy. Right? I've decided not to participate in that. I've decided to participate in the abundant economy. Right? And then you do. You absolutely decide what is the authority in my life.